For most people, space seems like a distant and inaccessible place, but sometimes fragments of it can be found on our own planet. In this video, I invite you to learn about the most mysterious objects of extraterrestrial origin. Enjoy the viewing. Number 1. Pumapunku. It is a megalithic ritual complex located at more than 4,000 meters above sea level in Bolivia. For a long time, archaeologists believed that Pumapunku was built in the 600s AD by the Aymara people. However, recent research using radiocarbon analysis showed that some elements of the complex date back to 100 years BC. If the construction of the complex really began more than 3,500 years ago, this find could be considered a sensation in archaeology. By studying the ruins of the complex, scientists managed to determine what Pumapunku looked like in ancient times. It represented a group of buildings on a hill surrounded by masonry. Two types of stones were used for construction: red sandstone and andesite. While the sandstone was brought from a quarry located 10 kilometers from the construction site, the andesite had to be transported from a distance of approximately 90 kilometers. Of course, there was no machinery for these purposes back then, so it remains a mystery how people managed to move stones weighing several hundred tons over such distances. It is also surprising that all the stones were specially processed so that they could be assembled without using mortar. And again, the ancient builders accomplished this task without the tools we have today. It is difficult to believe that ancient humans could build such a complex manually, which is why such structures are often associated with extraterrestrial civilizations. Number 2. Perhaps the most famous attraction on Easter Island is the Moai statues. Moai are large monolithic statues that represent human beings. Currently, there are 887 Moais on the island. Historians believe that the Moai were created by the Rapanui Aborigines between the years 1200 and 1500 AD. The first to describe these statues was the famous explorer James Cook. Most of the Moai are made of andesitic basalt that was extracted from the quarry of the Reno Raraku volcano. On average, the height of these statues is 3 to 5 meters and their weight does not exceed 5 tons. The largest of them has a height of just under 10 meters. To this day, the true purpose of these statues remains unknown. Locals believe that these stone giants were built by leaders and that the power of their ancestors resides in them, helping to keep the island fragrant and fertile. However, the details of the legend vary among locals. How such huge stones were transported to construction sites also remains a mystery. Scientists assume that primitive tools were used that allowed heavy rocks to be lifted, as well as pack animals. Number 3. In 1912, the American bibliophile Wilfrid Voynich bought an astonishing manuscript from Italian monks. It contained text written in an unknown language, as well as many illustrations. The manuscript consists of 248 pages measuring 22.5 by 16 centimeters and is divided into several sections: botany, astronomical, biological, astrological, pharmaceutical, and recipes. Each entry is accompanied by an illustration. However, the drawings represent objects that do not exist on Earth. For example, the pharmaceutical section contains illustrations of unknown medicinal plants and the astronomical section of planets unknown to science. The author of the book also remains unknown. However, in 2009, scientists managed to determine that the manuscript was written in the 14th century. For a long time, specialists tried to decipher the text of the manuscript, but to this day no one has succeeded. For this reason, the manuscript is associated with extraterrestrial civilizations. Perhaps it tells of life on an unknown planet, but all these hypotheses lack evidence. Now you understand why the Voynich manuscript is considered one of the most mysterious manuscripts in the world. Number 4. In 1974, a group of workers found at the bottom of the Mureș River, in Romania, ancient remains of mastodons that lived on our planet more than 11,000 years ago. Among the bones was also an unusual object. People did not understand what it was and decided to hand over their discovery to the Cluj-Napoca Institute. Scientists became interested in the strange object and began to investigate it. Initially, experts made measurements of the object, which they called the eyed wedge. Its length was 20.2 centimeters, width 12.5 centimeters, and height 7 centimeters. The scientists then proceeded to study the composition of the object. The wedge was made of a very complex alloy that included about 12 different elements, but most of the alloy consisted of aluminum. The thickness of the oxide layer covering the wedge was 1 millimeter. This led scientists to assume that the age of the mysterious object was at least 300 years. But how is it possible if aluminum was obtained by the Danish physicist Hans Christian Ørsted in 1825? Furthermore, the wedge was found next to ancient mastodon remains, suggesting that its age could be thousands of years. Naturally, such an unusual object aroused the interest of ufologists, who assumed that the wedge was an object of extraterrestrial origin. Surprisingly, this hypothesis was accepted by renowned aerospace engineers, who confirmed that the object could be the landing gear support of a spacecraft. Iyad's aluminum wedge is also sometimes called a misplaced artifact, as scientists still cannot precisely determine its age and purpose. Number 5. Andhajs' story is truly amazing. On November 30, 1954, while she was sleeping on her couch in Alabama, she was hit by a meteorite that crashed into her house. Fortunately, she survived with only a bruise the size of the meteorite. This incident made her the first recorded person to be hit by a meteorite and survive. The chance of being hit by a meteorite is extremely low, approximately 1 in 1.6 million. In fact, scientists suggested that she was more likely to be hit simultaneously by a tornado, lightning, and a hurricane than by a meteorite. And decided to keep the meteorite and later sold it to the Alabama Museum of Natural History in 1955, where it is still displayed today. The radio she was hit with is also on display in the same museum. Number 6. Ancient Egypt is considered one of the main civilizations related to extraterrestrial races. And if you still doubt this, here is another proof of this fact. In 1922, near the Egyptian city of Luxor, British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered the tomb of the famous Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun. Entering the tomb, Carter found a sarcophagus with the mummy of the ruler, as well as many treasures, among which was an unusual dagger. Despite its age of more than 3,300 years, the dagger was perfectly preserved. It had a golden handle with ornamentation and a unique decoration, difficult to associate with the time of the ancient world. For a long time, the dagger was the object of study by scientists. In 2016, specialists were able to study the chemical composition of the weapon using an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer. The results of this research showed that the dagger was made of a material of extraterrestrial origin. Scientists believe the weapon was made using a meteorite. Whether Tutankhamun knew that his dagger blade had an extraterrestrial origin is unknown, but it is possible that during his reign, people already knew about space objects that periodically fall to Earth. Number 7. The lead sarcophagus of Notre Dame de Paris. The lead sarcophagus of Notre Dame Cathedral, also known as Our Lady of Paris, was discovered during restoration works after the devastating fire of 2019. Two mysterious sarcophagi were found under the nave of the cathedral and, after months of investigation, details about the people buried in them were revealed. The first sarcophagus is believed to contain the ashes of Antoine de la Porte, a high priest, while the second houses the remains of an unknown man nicknamed Le Cavalier, presumably a horseman. Although these discoveries shed light on the history of individuals from different eras, there is still much to learn about their lives and historical implications. Investigations revealed that Antoine de la Porte led a sedentary life with signs of food and alcohol abuse. His burial site adorned with royalties suggests an aristocratic heritage. On the other hand, the second sarcophagus, which contains Le Cavalier, presents notable differences, indicating that these people lived in different times. The discovery of these sarcophagi has added a new chapter to the history of Notre Dame Cathedral and has generated interest in the life and society of those buried within. Archaeological research continues to unravel more details about these historical figures and their connection to the rich history of the cathedral and the city of Paris. Number 8. Acambaro figures. The figures are an intriguing archaeological find discovered by Valdemar J. Rudd, a German amateur archaeologist, in Acambaro, Guanajuato, Mexico. These figures consist of approximately 33,000 tiny ceramic representations that challenge conventional perceptions of history and archaeology. Rudd claimed that the figures resembled dinosaurs, which has sparked controversy and debates over their authenticity. Some consider the figures to be anachronistic and question the coexistence of humans and dinosaurs. However, skeptics point to the lack of formal archaeological excavations and proper documentation, which has raised doubts about the veracity of the findings. Controversy also centers on Rudd's motivations and tactics, suggesting that the figures could be modern fabrications to support a dramatic narrative. The Acambaro figures raise questions about the relationship between humans and dinosaurs, but the lack of solid scientific support and the absence of formal investigations underscore the need for a more rigorous archaeological approach to evaluate their authenticity. Number 9. Pharaoh Akhenaten, also known as Amenhotep IV, ruled Egypt from 365 to 1349 BC. Agathon is considered the most mysterious pharaoh of all. If you look at his sculptures, you can see that he had an atypical appearance compared to the other pharaohs. He did not look like a stern, strong, and powerful man. Instead, he was characterized by a soft look, thinness, feminine rounded hips, and an elongated face shape. It is not known if Agathon really had that androgynous appearance or if he just wanted to be represented as a figure that combined both masculine and feminine characteristics at the same time. Akhenaten was known as one of the most influential religious innovators in human history. He turned Egypt into a monotheistic society, abandoning the worship of many gods. The only god for Agathon was Aten, or the solar disk. In his honor, he built the city of Amarna. But the most surprising thing is that Aten described his connection with celestial beings and considered himself one of them. Furthermore, recent research by scientists showed that this pharaoh had several genetic mutations. Ufologists believe that he was subjected to experiments carried out by extraterrestrials. Ancient Egypt was shrouded in mysteries that remain unsolved to this day. Therefore, it is not known who he really was, an ordinary human or perhaps an alien?